Welcome to another episode of On the Line. I'm Joe Mullings, and we are out here in San Fran at the Potrero studio with Joe Urban, CEO. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how's it going, Joe? And I'd like to introduce one of our guests today, who is also one of our technical advisors and clinical advisors, Dr. Greg Schears, a world thought-leading expert in critical care medicine.
Hi, Joe and Joe.
Dr. Scheer, would you share, or can I call you Greg, share a little bit about your background, your history, and your role with Potrero?
Sure. By training, I'm a pediatric intensivist and anesthesiologist, and I have a long-standing interest in the use of technology to help reduce patient complications. And I was recommended to Potrero to assist with the clinical side of this medical device development.
And your background in medicine, could you share that with us?
Sure. I started out as with pediatric training at WashU St. Louis Children's Hospital. I was there for a normal residency and chief residency and attended there, and then went to Johns Hopkins Hospital. I did a full anesthesia residency, pediatric anesthesia fellowship, pediatric critical care fellowship, and then was recruited to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where I served as one of the medical directors for the ECMO team, as well as working predominantly in the cardiac ICU and general ICU, and also the pediatric ORs. And then Mayo Clinic recruited me to joined them in 2001 to head up their ECMO program, and I served there as a anesthesiologist and intensivist. As I say, I've been there since 2001.
Got it. And your role with Potrero?
I'm a clinical advisor. I'm helping with development of the Accurin device. It's a rather ingenious, remarkable device that has solved problems that we've been grappling with for years. And so within this initial generation that's going to market, has nailed two tremendously difficult problems all in one convenient package. So it's really quite exciting.
Yeah. And so, it's been fantastic working with Greg, over the course of my tenure here, which hasn't been long, 10 months, but and his activity helping us to develop the clinical feature vectors that will be required for our machine learning algorithms. Pretty amazing.
What is, from a layperson's perspective, or I've got my mom's in the hospital, and so what would she be susceptible to in the ICU, CCU setting? And the Accurin might make that difference?
Well, that's kind of a big question. She's susceptible to a lot of potential issues in an ICU setting. One, she's in an ICU setting because she's vulnerable. She's got some clinical problem that's broader there, so an ICU level is a higher level of monitoring. And usually or often, at least in tertiary quaternary centers, the ICUs are focused on a given organ system or systems that they're specializing in. And within that, and relevant to the Accurin device, if you have a standard urimeter or even the next best thing that's out there, that has been out there, the Criticor device, you have a device that is a device just draining urine. In the case of just a dumb urimeter, it isn't doing anything. You have to empty it, put it in a graduate cylinder, try to understand what the urine output is with whatever frequency that can be accomplished. So it's a very archaic means of gathering a critical bit of information.
So, pardon me, Greg, for the layperson again, why is, for a critical care doctor, urine output so important?
Yeah, urine output is a body fluid that helps provide the clinician with insights into several organ systems. So in order to have urine output, you have to have functioning kidneys that are able to, process the blood flow going to it, filtering it, and then taking the filtered blood plasma and then reabsorbing the electrolytes and fluids to provide ultimately urine, hopefully appropriately concentrated and whatnot. In order to drive that flow to the kidney, you have to have a functioning heart, adequate blood pressure, adequate intravascular volume. So in effect, urine output sits at a very critical juncture of, in the ideal circumstance, an optimally functioning cardiopulmonary system driving an adequate pressure head, and then adequate intravascular volume that is being pushed through, and then this sophisticated filter system that the kidney provides to then receive that volume, eliminate the toxic wastes that are a component of that, but preserve the overall intravascular volume. So it's a very elegant and highly tuned system. Of course, in a disease state, it gets out of balance, and it could be that there's an issue with inadequate cardiac function, not having enough driving pressure, or it could be inadequate intravascular volume due to trauma, hemorrhage, dehydration, or shock from sepsis. There's so many things that can go wrong. So as a clinician, urine output is amazingly important. And so one of the things as I'm looking after a critically ill patient, I'm there at the bedside assessing them. And one of the things with the old system of a urimeter is I'm sitting there holding the urine drainage tube and constantly having to milk it in order to have a better sense of what the patient's urine output is because of the inadequacies of the current system. You really would like to know what is that kidney doing for you? Is it having a good constant flow? Because we get called for low urine output and other things. What does it mean? Is there a problem with the drainage? Is there a problem with the hemodynamics? And so it helps clue us in into because the kidney is an end organ, it helps clue us in into what is the state of the person and where there may be a problem within the system. So it's, but again, the issue has been historically our means of detecting urine output is archaic. We at best get urine measured by very diligent ICU nurses who are just all over it. At the most, we'll have hourly information, but that information is manually transferred from some measure, and because of the other issues with airlock from the drainage, that information that we get may be highly inaccurate. Hence, the judgments that we have to make about this data could be flawed. And so part of why I'm excited about the Accurine device is that to eliminate that airlock issue and to get continuous data. I mean, just think about it this way. Imagine if we only got a heart rate once every hour or once every 3 hours, and what variability you can have clinically if somebody's going into ventricular tachycardia or some other arrhythmia or bradycardia and having low output. You can't imagine managing patients like that. It would be nuts. And you could have some tremendously bad outcomes. So with continuous urine output now being available to us with reliability, I think we're going to see an amazing utility to this device, an amazing ability to have better clues and hopefully earlier recognition of disease states.
So, and that was like holy education,
Yeah,
right?
I feel great.
I do.
Yeah,
Sorry,
wow.
I started
no,
to ramble.
No,
there.
no. I was
Thanks, Professor.
locked.
That was
I was
great.
locked, right?
was
Because
perfect.
I don't think many people understand the holy trinity between the lungs, the heart, and the kidneys, right? And so, what would be the hesitation in general? So let's talk about Acuren, but in general, of incorporating this sort of technology into the standard of care in a critical care setting?
So nowadays, introduction of, it doesn't matter what the device is, introduction of any new device is going to be concerns related to cost, of course, and efficacy. The fact that any device might not have, there isn't going to be a subsequent additional reimbursement. So cost justification is always a key thing. And I think, again, with having more accurate urine output, I believe it's going to be obvious. I know we're on the front end of this, and data is continuing to be generated through its use, which, again, it's very exciting always to be on the front end of a trailblazing technology. But one can easily imagine how this is going to help with reducing length of stay, earlier detection of disease states. Just as one example that people may be aware of, this whole problem with sepsis. This has been a conundrum for a long time, and the critical care, infectious disease, and other experts have worked very hard to develop algorithms based on our current understanding of that very challenging disease process that kills hundreds of thousands of people every year. So to have a device that can recognize a disease state earlier to allow an earlier intervention could have a tremendous impact on saving lives and reducing morbidity. So it's, again, with time we will see these things evolve, but it seems pretty obvious that there's going to be incremental benefits, and now it'll be up to us to prove those out.
I think earlier we were talking about the families that are affected, hundreds of thousands of people that die every year from acute kidney injury. And we oftentimes say patients, and I think that's a sanitized thing that we need to humanize and focus on the families that are affected. It's not just 300,000 lives. It's somebody that's not at a kitchen table for dinner. And so tell us about, to help humanize it, who is that patient? Can you think of a patient that had acute kidney injury that did not have a great outcome?
Oh, yes. This is, so I think a lot about, so one area that I spend a lot of time thinking about is the ECMO population, extracorporeal membrane population, which is a salvage strategy using circulatory support to help with cardiac and or pulmonary failure. And I read a lot of the literature related to that and other circulatory devices and also critically ill patients. And so as you look through all of the studies that correlate likelihood of death or an indicator that that subgroup is more likely to die, acute kidney injury or kidney failure is going to show up every single time pretty much. It is a very strong indicator of poor outcome. If you have disease X and then you have disease X plus kidney failure, the likelihood that you're going to die is way higher. So the risk that increases is substantial. So an intervention, a monitoring technology that could identify injury before it's non-reversible would be tremendous. So if we have a chance to do such a thing, it's going to have to be earlier, because once, if you've had kidney damage beyond a reversible point, then you're really going to be in trouble. Then we're talking dialysis and or if the patient's an appropriate candidate, transplant. So renal failure is a terrible thing to have. It's, if you get into the chronic phase and have to have a fistula and go through dialysis, very difficult, very expensive. I mean, so, you could talk about these things forever. If you look at like the CMS budget, a full 25% of the budget for our healthcare system from CMS goes to kidney failure. It is terrible. So it is and we have, there's many bad things that are helping to drive the growth of kidney failure, the obesity, type 2 diabetes, all kinds of things are really making it a terrible thing. And within the question always comes up, how much of these things can we reverse? How much can we catch early? And if you look at, it's amazing if you look at some of the data related to urine output, how that shows up repetitively as a reliable early indicator of renal function. I mean, nobody should be surprised by that. We've never had the ability to have trusted urine output regularly. Even in some of the really good studies, the best they can do reliably is like every 3 hours to put together that data. So now to be able to get it 1 hour or less as you guys continue to push the envelope, wow. It's going to open up whole new pathways of early recognition of disease state, because the kidney functions like, I hate to use cliches, but like the canary in a coal mine. It is an early indicator of so many things. There is some lack of specificity with dropping off of urine output, so clinicians are still going to have to, at least early on until smarter systems are developed, look at why the drop off of urine output. But I'm sure as machine learning and artificial intelligence grows and is incorporated algorithmically into these devices, we will have even smarter systems that help the clinician identify disease states earlier and hence have a more specific intervention that can help patients.
So, do you mind if I ask it? So, speaking of, put your futurist hat on. The ideal hospital, year 2040. What do you see?
The ideal hospital?
Yeah. What does it look like 20 years from now? And how is it different from today?
Well, I hope the ideal hospital maintains the focus of the patient comes first, that there is nothing more important than the patient, and that all decisions are made around that. That if they keep that beacon, it'll be a good place. Of course, we have many pressures nowadays that we're all fighting. The cost of healthcare is a big problem, and we need to keep costs down. We need to be smarter in terms of how we provide medicine, and we need to, so hence we have to be more efficient. There are, again, I apologize for my rambling because there's so many thoughts coming into my head. I work at a phenomenal place with amazing people, and I'm very lucky about that, for that. You cannot underestimate the importance of quality clinicians at the bedside. There is nothing more important in an organization than its culture and its people. And that culture is driven from the top. So we look at our leaders. Again, I'm blessed with amazing leaders. And they transmit, they help guide us with the culture of how we can best serve patients. So I'm hoping that all of these human components, even before we talk about the technical side, get preserved, because that is the ideal healthcare system. And then because we have the human pressures with these personnel of other opportunities, for example, in the old days, we used to have nurses that would be around for a decade or two, and they were as good as any physician. They were just so smart and experienced. And those are the kind of nurses you wanted in your ICU room. And you knew when, Jan is on or somebody, you were like, oh, yes, it's going to be a good night. But the problem, like with all of us, is that the cream of the crop people have other alternatives these days. They go to CRNA school, they go to NP school, and so we lose some of that. So engineers and medical device people have to think about how can we help in these systems that have some of this intellectual side draining that we didn't have happen before, but now we have to compensate to maintain safety. So it's necessary to develop smarter systems to assist those at the bedside. It's not like the people at the bedside are less bright, but they're less experienced and they're moving through faster. So they don't have the knowledge of time, but they're smart and good people. So how can we assist them to continue to maintain the safety of care through providing insights that maybe the human can't? And it's intriguing to think about that hospital of the future, how let's say artificial intelligence, machine learning, and integrating those things into a smarter device to alert us about an impending condition that even a skilled clinician wouldn't pick up so quickly. There's indications of this sort of thing in various parts of medicine now, where one can identify a hazard well before a clinician could. And so I see, again, devices like Accurant is going to readily be able to do that with the things that you guys are working on. It's quite amazing how that's going to get integrated into that machine of the future, that device of the future that's really going to help the bedside clinician, and in doing so, significantly help the patient. So the compliance is always a challenge when you have a human involved. Understanding the human factors and engineering out compliance issues, reducing risks, and making the system smarter. That's what the future is going to be. So technology will continue to help us improve patient safety and make better care. And I think as I'm watching the trends out there, the use of devices and incorporating data in an algorithmic form to help with both identification and helping with decision making later is really going to improve healthcare and compensate, at least to some degree, for the exodus of the more senior people that we have that have been, let's say, the continuity and the safety, where we need safety coming from a different way. And I think the we'll have a balance. A balance will be struck. I don't know. It's hard to know all the other trends and things that will happen, but I see that as a very positive thing that will help us.
Greg, you had mentioned the word that I think is the boogeyman in med tech and med device is cost. Right? How is cost defined at your bedside?
Yeah, and that's a great question. As a clinician, truthfully, I don't define it at all, because the cost component is a gateway that I don't intervene at. I'm given tools that I use to care for patients. So it's not, we've always been conscious of cost. That's been kind of driven into us for years. So we try not to be wasteful ever, and we try to always do things for the right reasons. And so that part is ingrained in us. With regard to, if you mean with your question, choosing a device or choosing devices, many hospitals have let's say, a value analysis committee or something that will review data and need and cost and make a decision about bringing a device on or not. So that's not a process that I'm involved in. I'm on the receiving end of what is available and then using those things.
And so does a hospital, and I want to stay on that for a second, when I think about cost, and if AKI is a $10 billion a year cost to the market, and I can look at a device that comes in the door, and even if it's 2x to the current as you called it, urimeter. Yet I can easily do the math, go down range, and clearly save billions of dollars, or even in my hospital, hundreds of millions. How does that math not work out?
It's a great question, and it should, and it also should be reasonably easy to prove. So, in medicine, like other disciplines where prospective randomized trials are sort of the golden yardstick against which we make judgments and try to be in a non-biased way, those things are going to help drive change. But change is always so slow when it comes to technology, and there's always as I've watched it now being
the adoption
more,
of it.
The adoption of there's every now and then you see something atypical like iPhones or whoa, that was like there was a wildfire going through, and now even 6-year-olds think they need iPhones. So it's the utility of it it was just crazy, and it just really seemed to take off fast. In medicine, bringing in new technology, even if it's the greatest thing, can be a real challenge. And there's multiple reasons for that. Hospitals have limited budgets. You're not directly reimbursed for that. So it's people want to be a little bit conservative and not jump on something that it's not clear to them it's advantageous. I have no doubt, having seen what is happening with this device, that it's going to change medicine. It is doing all the right things, and it's doing things that have never been done before. So even this first generation device is amazing. It like I said at the beginning, it's solved 2 problems that have never been solved before in this way. So it is a brilliant device, and then the future of algorithmic development and being able to take data and help with decision making will be even further add to its value. So it's but the people making judgments regarding introducing additional cost within a health system, people have a very skeptical eye. So there's a real proof problem and a slow adoption rate that occurs. It just seems to be sort of the nature of things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, that was an education for me.
Completely. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Again, I start rambling. There's a lot of components to this that's very interesting, but in a nutshell, that's the issue.
I always learn from Greg.
This is seriously. Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here like, it's great. Thank you. Do you want to hit him with your questions?
All right. So, Greg, every single week, you saw the 5 questions upstairs. We did one of yours. Every single week, we do the 5 unique questions that are scrambled. So, like every new employee that comes in, I sit down with, and we go over 5 questions, and we interview each other. And one, it's a great way for me to get to know the employee, and then it's also another way for the company to get to know the people, okay? And so you saw a little bit of it upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
And so now we're gonna finish it.
Okay.
So
all right.
He answered the first one, right?
Yeah, you answered the first one. So what fad or trend do you wish would come back? You said movie theater.
Drive-in.
Drive-in movie theater.
Yeah.
And then mine was like, we'll just do MC Hammer Pants, because it was worth seeing Kelly dance. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw it in the back, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask you number 2, okay? If you could bring back one TV show that was canceled, which one would you bring back?
Well, it would be, if I could add on, could I go back in time also?
As far back, it's been canceled. So.
Or just isn't put on anymore, right? It was canceled, right? Yeah.
Boy, that's an interesting thing, because I'm sure I could justify a bunch of them. If I could go back in time, I've always been very drawn to tech things, and so Star Trek the original Star Trek series, just is glaring at me. And for many reasons, the times I spent with my friends in high school watching the reruns, so I was born in '60. And so those episodes, they came out, it was just a very innovative show. It came out in like 65, 66, something like that.
3 years it ran or something.
Yeah, 3 years.
Gene Roddenberry.
Brilliant, just brilliant. They were so far ahead, and the moral, whether or not you like William Shatner and all that business, but the Leonard Nimoy, and I don't know if you saw his documentary, it was either called Just Spock or I Am Spock or something like that.
Right.
A really quality piece where you get into the head of the person. This was posthumously done by his son, who's a director. And really a family guy, or tried to be a family guy from a supportive standpoint, but trying to be busy and employed, which is hard for an actor to do. And he took on this weird role, which back then was really quite risky. He had done more conventional things. So anyway, again, I could talk a lot about it, but I love Star Trek. I love sci-fi, and I would love to either put myself back in that time frame, which would mean I'd be a lot younger and I'd have hair, or or to have it, to be running and come back out again.
Have you been a fan, if you don't mind jumping into it, have you been a fan of any of the other Star Trek TV shows?
All of it.
You have?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
all of it.
I couldn't cozy up. I was such a purist. Everything else was just, I couldn't do it.
And it's amazing how these things translate generationally. So my oldest daughter, who's a senior in college, she is a Major League Star Trek fan. And we have, of course, the DVDs, Blu-rays of all the old series, and also Next Generation and everything else. And they aren't in my home right now because they're with her.
Yeah.
So they're gone.
They're gone.
And with so I have 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys, and with my boys, we always have on the calendar when the next, let's say, Star Wars is coming out, and so we don't watch them independently, we watch them together. So we'll wait for that opportunity. We do our best to do Thursday opening night and then go to a midnight showing or whatever. Regardless of where we are, we try to coalesce and then try to do it, and if we don't, we wait.
That's awesome.
Because it's a really big thing.
I think for me, it's I have like 4 that came to mind. Happy Days.
Oh yeah.
I loved Happy Days.
Here goes the song.
Yeah, the '57 Chevy.
It's in there the rest of the day now, too.
Yeah.
Right. It was
the innocence
fantastic.
of the time too.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Caught the essence of it.
Yeah.
Wonder Years in
Yes.
the 1980s. I thought that was a fantastically done show. Of course, the A-Team. It was just fun. And then I think the closest to modern times is I love Lost, and when that came out, it was brand new. Like that genre had never really been attempted, and I thought they did a really good job of hooking you every week and the backstories, and so I thought that was neat. All right, you get the next question, so you ask it.
I ask this one?
Yeah, and then we just flip-flop back and
Oh,
forth.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay. So, what's the last movie that you watched?
All right, so this is going to sound Emile Zola. Has anybody heard of Emile Zola? Seriously? No? Of course
Athlete?
not. No?
Okay.
Emile.
Come on, guys. No, I'm just kidding. Of course you haven't. It won the 1938 Academy Award. And so my wife and I, we just decided, like, instead of watching all these new movies, that we went back to 1932, and we're going to watch every Academy Award movie in order over the next couple of years. And so, like, we're fuddy-duddies, old fuddy-duddies. But that's been fun. And so the last one was last Saturday, and it was the life of Emile Zola, who was a French journalist in the 1860s who was just fantastic and caused a lot of justice to be drawn into the court system, into the military, and it was just a neat movie. So that was the last one. How about you?
Well, it was on the plane over here. If that counts.
Yeah, it counts. Which one?
It was Coco. I
My
heard a
girls
lot
love
of
that,
good
yeah.
things about it,
That's
and
awesome.
I'm a big kid. There's no question,
Yeah.
and I've got a really soft heart, and I really enjoyed watching that. It was a very well done movie, and it spoke to the importance of family, and both living and dead.
And this is where they cross the side. And
Yes.
I haven't seen it. My girls love it, and I will get to see it. I guarantee it. Cool. But they love it.
Yeah, good movie.
Yeah.
I would recommend it.
All right, my turn. What was your favorite go-to restaurant in college?
So I lived a very Spartan life in college, and pre-med very competitive, or at least I always felt that way. And so you used your time extremely well, and I spent endless long hours in Carol's, studying till all hours of the night. So I'm going to give you two favorites.
Okay.
Two favorites, and one was, and I don't remember the name of it right off. It was a gyros place. Getting gyros at 11:30 at night with my friends. So back then, the drinking age was 18, and so we would go out after 11:30 or so, 12 o'clock. The libraries would be closing down, and they stayed open at this place till like 2, and you get this heavily onioned gyros with lots of sauce.
Isn't that great?
And you couldn't stand your dorm room the next day for the
I'm
smell.
Sure.
But boy, it was just so good.
At the time, it was
It
fantastic.
was often. It was just
I'm
awesome.
just curious, Joe. Do you have a favorite?
Skyline Chili.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I went to school in Dayton,
In
Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio, right?
Yeah. Right on Brown Street next to Tim's Bar
Yeah.
for all the
It's
UD
a
grads.
unique chili.
Skyline
it's not
Chili. It's
like
unbelievable.
it's almost like it's more soupish, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
or
is.
the spaghetti noodles.
Yes, on the hot dog.
And,
right.
and it's a salad bar with
Yeah.
spaghetti. It's all the neat things. Your imagination goes wild and make whatever you want. I
And
love
you can
it.
buy it, just so you know, you can buy it frozen in a supermarket, and it's pretty darn close.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, I'll have
Yeah.
to try.
With angel hair.
Because
Nice.
everybody from Ohio talks about Skyline.
Yeah.
Every single person. For me, it was my brother and I. Every Tuesday, there was a wing place, BW3s, and it was they would do 10-cent wings, and so my brother and I.
What's the record?
Yeah. Well, we would order 40 to 50 wings. But the reason they did this, and it would get jam-packed with people, is everyone would come in and drink beer for the rest of the night. So my brother and I would come in, we'd say 40, 50 wings, and we have $4 or $5, and we'd drink water. And so we'd eat these two big, huge piles of of wings. Oh, they did. Every week they saw us coming. And so we would try to get in early before the crowd so we could eat our wings and get out of there. But for $4 or $5, we were able to eat a big pile of wings.
No angioplasty?
No, not yet.
I have a funny wing story, too,
Okay.
if you want to hear it. When I was at St. Louis Children's Hospital in St. Louis, when I was going home, I was living on Maryland Avenue. There was this bar that made the best buffalo wings. And my wife and I would go there, or then when she was my girlfriend, we would go there on the way home and have wings. And I just got in my head, I needed to learn how to make these. And I literally spent an entire month eating wings every day at home, trying every possible way to cook the wing, to perfect it, and to get the sauce right as well. And I did, ultimately, and I continued to make them, though it's a little bit time-consuming. But I'm a big wing fan, and because of the reduced price wing of Buffalo Wild Wings, we'll go on Tuesday nights, but not 10 cents, I wish. But it was a thing, continues to be a thing.
That's great. All right, and the last one, I think you get.
Okay, what song or artist would pop up if you tuned on your iTunes right now?
Probably either U2 or Pearl Jam. And I know they're two very different genres of music, but those are probably the two that would pop up. One of the two. Eddie Vedder in some sort, or U2.
So it's a funny thing about music, and though I have really wide taste and I like a lot of different things, you always go back to kind of like your comfort food of music.
Junior high, high school.
Yes,
Always.
Exactly right. And those songs take you back to those moments of when you were dejected and all that goes along with that. And if I pulled up my playlist, so I love to ski. First set in my playlist is going to be the Eagles and then the Doobies, and it's just going to
That's
go right.
great.
Where does
down.
Creedence come in? Does Creedence
Oh,
come
I
in?
love
Creedence is in
Creedence.
there,
I love
absolutely.
Creedence. Love
CCR,
Creedence. Yep.
awesome. Yeah.
They're great. And the Eagles are great. What about you?
So I just wrote it down, but it's also so there's 4 millennials doing the back end of this production in the studio with us, and then I'm a 62, you're 60, and Joe, when were you born?
74.
Okay,
Yeah.
so music. When I say, don't millennials answer this? When I say JT, who's the artist? Who is it?
It's
When you say JT, when I say JT, I'm going to listen to some JT.
James
Taylor.
Yeah,
Taylor.
James Taylor.
James
yeah.
Taylor, yeah.
Right. So when I sit in the
Carolina,
office with
yeah.
my team,
Play some JT.
yeah, what JT? What is it for you guys?
Justin Timberlake.
Oh, no way. Are you kidding me?
Because it goes by JT.
No. So we've
No.
had this discussion so many
Huh.
times.
Yeah.
JT, I'm gonna turn on some JT. And she's like, Justin Timberlake, really? I'm like,
I have some JT on mine. Yeah.
JT.
Heck yeah.
So that's who's on mine. It would be JT.
Yeah. Not Justin Timberlake.
No, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Thanks,
Yeah.
Greg.
He's done a lot of good stuff.
I don't even listen to Justin Timberlake. I only listen to records.
Well, this was awesome.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you,
Greg.
Joe.
Greg.
Really appreciate it.
it.
So this is another episode of On the Line. I'm Joe Mullings in studio at Potrero with Joe Urban.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Dr. Greg Schears. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
Have a great day.